At last, the armies clashed at one strategic point. They slammed their shields together. Pike scraped pike, with the grappling strength of fighters armed in bronze, and their round shields pounded, boss on welded boss, and the sound of struggle roared and rocked the earth. Screams of men and cries of triumph breaking in one breath. Fighters killing, fighters killed, and the ground streamed blood. Wave on wave they came. Achaean battalions, ceaseless, surging on to war. And soon the Trojans began to waver. Like sheep when they hear their crying lambs, so the shouts rose up from the long Trojan lines, and not one cry, no common voice to bind them. And the next moment they would have clambered back inside their city walls, terror-struck by the Achaeans, primed for battle. But down leapt Hector from his chariot, fully armed, hit the ground, and brandishing 2 sharp spears, went striding down his lines, ranging flank to flank, driving his fighters into battle, rousing grisly war, and round the Trojans whirled, bracing to meet the Achaeans face to face. Hector shouted out to his men in a piercing voice,
"Now be men, my friends! Call up your battle fury, till I can return to Troy and tell them all, the old councillors, all our wives, to pray to the gods and vow to offer them many splendid victims."
As Hector turned for home, his helmet flashed, and the long, dark hide of his bossed shield, the rim running the metal edge, drummed his neck and ankles. And now, when he reached the Scaean gates and the great oak, the wives and daughters of Troy came rushing up around him, asking about their sons, brothers, friends, and husbands. But Hector told them only, "Pray to the gods." He came to Priam's palace, that magnificent structure built wide with porches and colonnades of polished stone, and there at the palace Queen Hecuba met her son, clutched his hand, and urged him, called his name.
"My child, why have you left the bitter fighting? Why have you come home? Oh, look how they wear you out, the sons of Achaea. Curse them, battling round our walls. But wait, I'll bring you some honeyed mellow wine. When a man's exhausted, wine will build his strength."
"Don't offer me mellow wine, mother, not now. You'd sap my limbs, I'd lose my nerve for war. And I'd be ashamed to pour a glistening cup to Zeus with unwashed hands. I'm spattered with blood and filth. No, mother, you are the one to pray. Go to Athena's shrine, the queen of plunder. Promise to sacrifice 12 heifers in her shrine, yearlings never broken, if only she'll pity Troy, the Trojan wives, and all our helpless children."
At that, Hector turned and hurried from the palace, back by the same way, down the wide, well-paved streets throughout the city, until he reached the Scaean gates, the last point he would pass to gain the field of battle. There, his warm, generous wife came running up to meet him, Andromache, the beloved of bronze-helmed Hector. She joined him now, and following in her steps, a servant holding the boy against her breast. In the first flush of life, only a baby, Hector's son, the darling of his eyes, and radiant as a star. The great man of war, breaking into a broad smile, his gaze fixed on his son, in silence. Andromache, pressing close beside him and weeping freely now, clung to his hand, urged him, called him.
"Reckless one, my Hector, your own fiery courage will destroy you. Have you no pity for him, our helpless son? Or me, and the destiny that weighs me down, your widow now so soon? Yes, soon they will kill you off, all the Achaean forces massed for assault, and then bereft of you, better for me to sink beneath the earth. Pity me, please. Take your stand on the rampart here, before you orphan your son, and make your wife a widow.
All this weighs on my mind too, dear woman. For in my heart and soul I also know this well. The day will come when sacred Troy must die. Priam must die, and all his people with him. Even so, it is less the pain of the Trojans still to come that weighs me down, not even of Hecuba herself, or King Priam, or the thought that my own brothers may tumble in the dust, crushed by enemies. That is nothing, nothing beside your agony, when some brazen Achaean hales you off in tears, wrenching away your day of light and freedom. No, no. Let the earth come piling over my dead body before I hear your cries. I hear you dragged away.
In the same breath, shining Hector reached down for his son. But the boy recoiled, cringing against his nurse's full breast, screaming out at the sight of his own father. Terrified by the flashing bronze, the horsehair crest, the great ridge of the helmet, nodding, bristling terror, so it struck his eyes. And his loving father laughed, quickly lifting the helmet from his head, and raising his son, he kissed him, tossed him in his arms.
Zeus, all you immortals, grant this boy, my son, may be like me, first in glory among the Trojans, strong and brave like me, and rule all Troy in power, and one day let them say, he is a better man than his father.
Then Hector placed his son in the arms of his wife. Andromache pressed the child to her scented breast, smiling through her tears.
Andromache, no man will hurl me down to death against my fate. And fate? No man alive has ever escaped it, neither brave man nor coward. I tell you, it's born with us the day that we are born.
And his loving wife went home, turning, glancing back again and again, and weeping live, warm tears. But Hector, a flash in arms, took up his horsehair-crested helmet once again. Vaunting, a flash in arms, he swept out through the gates, bent on combat, fighting like wind when a god sends down some welcome blast to sailors, desperate for it, worked to death at the polished oars, beating the heavy seas, their arms slack with the labour. So, welcome Hector appeared to the Trojans, desperate for their captain. Shields slammed together, pike scraped pike, and the sound of struggle roared and rocked the earth. Screams of men and cries of triumph breaking in one breath, fighters killing, fighters killed, and the ground streamed blood. The Olympian father had fired up the Trojans. Hector far in the lead, bristling in all his force, harrying the long-haired Achaeans, killing the last stragglers, man after lagging man, and they fled in panic, a total rout. And white-armed Hera saw it, and filled with pity, the goddess' words went winging toward Athena.
Look, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is thunder, all our Achaeans dying there in droves. This maniac, Hector, I cannot bear him any longer. Look at the savage slaughter he has made.
But Zeus, who marshals the thunderheads, replied,
This powerful Hector will never quit the fighting. Not till swift Achilles rises beside the ships. That day they battle against the high sterns, pinned in the fatal straits and grappling for the body of Patroclus. So runs the doom of Zeus. I care nothing for you. You and your snarling anger. None in the world a meaner bitch than you!
So he erupted, but the white-armed goddess Hera answered not a word, her eyes wide, shuddering before his thunder. And now, down in the ocean, sank the fiery light of day, drawing the dark night across the grain-giving earth. For the men of Troy, the day went down against their will, but not the Achaeans. What a blessing! How they prayed for the nightfall coming on across their lines. But again, still bent on glory, Hector mustered his Trojan cohorts, pulled them back to wide open ground, where they found a sector free and cleared of corpses. They swung down from their chariots onto earth to listen to what Hector, dear to Zeus, commanded now.
Hear me, Trojans, Dardans, all our loyal allies. I had hoped by now, once we destroyed them all the Achaeans and all their hollow ships, we might turn home to the windy heights of Troy. But night came on too soon. That's what saved them. That alone. They and their ships along the churning surf. Very well, then. Let us give way to the dark night, set out our supper, unyoke our full-man teams. Then all night long till the breaking light of day we keep the watchfires blazing, hundreds of fires, and the rising glare can leap and hit the skies, so the long-haired Achaeans stand no chance tonight to cut and run on the sea's broad back.
The Trojans roared assent, and so their spirits soared all night long, and the watchfires blazed among them. Hundreds strong, as stars in the night sky, glittering round the moon's brilliance, blaze in all their glory when the air falls to a sudden windless calm. And beside each fire sat 50 fighting men. Poised in the leaping blaze and champing oats and glistening barley, stationed by their chariots, stallions waited for dawn to mount her glowing throne. So the Trojans held their watch that night. But not the Achaeans. God-sent panic seized them, comrade of blood-curdling rout. All their best was struck by grief too much to bear. Lord Marshal Agamemnon rose up in their midst, streaming tears like a dark spring running down some desolate rock face, its shaded currents flowing.
Mad, blind I was to have infuriated Achilles, to have gone and taken from his tents his slave coat. Why, look, that man is worth an entire army. But since I was blinded, lost in my own inhuman rage, now, at last, I am bent on setting things to rights. I'll give a priceless ransom to him, and along with it will go the one I took away at first, Achilles' captive. And I will swear a solemn binding oath in the bargain. I never mounted her bed, never once made love with her. Now, all these gifts will be handed him at once. Come. We'll send a detail of picked men. Giant Ajax and tactful royal Odysseus. Try hard now. Bring him round, invincible Achilles.
So Ajax and Odysseus made their way at once where the battle lines of breakers crash and drag, praying hard to the god who moves and shakes the earth, that they might bring the proud heart of Achilles round with speed and ease. Reaching the Myrmidon shelters and their ships, they found him there, delighting his heart now, plucking strong and clear on a fine lyre, while across from him Patroclus sat alone, in silence. The envoys stood before him, and Achilles, startled, sprang to his feet, the lyre still in his hands.
Welcome! Look, dear friends have come our way. I must be sorely needed now, my dearest friends. In all the Achaean armies, even in my anger. Come, a bigger wine bowl. Patroclus, set it here.
Odysseus filled his cup and lifted it toward Achilles.
Your health, great king. But it's not the flowing feast that is on our mind now. No, a stark disaster. Hector prays for the sacred dawn to break at once. He threatens to lop the high prows of our sterns and gut our ships with fire. And all our comrades pinned against the hulls, panicked by thick smoke, he'll rout and kill in blood.
But I have no desire to battle glorious Hector.
Achilles, Let your heart-devouring anger go. Think of the glory. Now you can kill Hector. Now, for once, you can meet the man head on.
Tomorrow at daybreak, once I have sacrificed to Zeus and all the gods and loaded up my holds and launched out on the breakers, watch, my friend, and you will see my squadron sail at dawn, fanning out on the Hellespont that swarms with fish.
Sail home. Is that what you are turning over in your mind, O glorious one, Achilles? Have you no heart at all to defend the ditch and wall which guard our fast-trim ships?
Mother tells me, the immortal goddess Thetis with her glistening feet, that two fates bear me on to the day of death. If I hold out here and I lay siege to Troy, my journey home is gone, but my glory never dies. If I voyage back to the fatherland I love, my pride, my glory dies. True. But the life that's left me will be long. The stroke of death will not come on me quickly.
Then giant Ajax rose to his feet, tall as a god, and broke his silence.
Ready, Odysseus? Come, back we go now. There's no achieving our mission here, I see. Achilles, the gods have planted a cruel, relentless fury in your chest. Not a thought for your comrades' love. Hard, ruthless man.
Ajax, my heart still heaves with rage whenever I call to mind that arrogance of his, Agamemnon, treating me like some vagabond. You go back to him and declare my message. I will not think of arming for bloody war again. Not till the son of wise King Priam, dazzling Hector, batters through the ditch and wall which guard our ships, slaughtering Achaeans, gutting the hulls with fire.
Then each man, lifting his own two-handled cup, poured it out to the gods. And back they went along the ships, Odysseus in the lead, and once the envoys reached Agamemnon's shelters, comrades leapt to their feet, welcomed them, one after another, pressing them with questions. But as steady, long-enduring Odysseus replied, silence held them all. His story struck them dumb. A long while they said nothing. Spirits dashed. But when dawn rose up from her bed, bringing light to immortal gods and mortal men, Zeus flung strife on Achaea's fast ships, the brutal goddess flaring his storm shield, his monstrous sign of war in both her fists. She stood on Odysseus' huge black-bellied hull, moored mid-line, so a shout could reach both wings. Upshore to Telamonian Ajax's camp, or down to Achilles. There strife took her stand, raising her high-pitched cry, great and terrible, lashing the fighting fury in each Achaean's heart. No stopping them now, mad for war and struggle. Now, suddenly, battle thrilled them more than the journey home, than sailing hollow ships to their dear native land. And retiring to a peak apart from the other gods, Zeus sat aloof, glorying in his power, gazing out over the city walls of Troy and the warships of Achaea. The flash of bronze, fighters killing, fighters killed. Trojans, the other side on the plain's high ground, formed around tall Hector, trampling shields and corpses. The axle under Hector's chariot splashed with blood. Blood on the handrails sweeping round the car, sprays of blood shooting up from the stallion's hoofs and churning, whirling rims. And Hector, straining to wade into the press and panicked ruck of men, charged them, break them down. He flung terror and stark disaster square in the Achaean lines, never pausing, giving his spear no rest. The Achaean trench could not hold out much longer, nor could the rampart rearing overhead. A wide wall they raised to defend the ships and the broad trench they drove around it all. But not yet did the Achaeans give way to assault. No, They stopped the breaches up with oxhide shields, and down from the breastwork heights they hurled rocks at the enemy coming on beneath the wall. Everywhere, rocks, ramparts, breastworks swam with the blood of Trojans, Achaeans, both sides. So powerful armies drew their battle line dead even, till, at last, Zeus gave Hector, the son of Priam, the greater glory, the first to storm the wall.
Drive! Drive, my stallion-breaking Trojans! Breach the Achaean rampart! Hurl your fire now, a blazing inferno of fire against their ships!
He grappled a boulder, bore it up and on, hurled it at the gates full centre, smashing the hinges left and right, and the boulder tore through, dropped with a crash, and both gates groaned and thundered. The door bars could not hold. The planking shattered up in the flying storm of splinters under the rock's force, and Hector burst through in glory, his face dark as the sudden rushing night. But he blazed on in bronze, and terrible fire broke from the gear that wrapped his body. 2 spears in his fist.
The wall! Storm the wall!
The Trojans rushed to obey him, some swarming over the top at once, others streaming in through the sturdy gateways. Achaeans scattering back in terror, back by the hollow hulls, the uproar rising, no way out, no end. Not so loud the breakers bellowing out against the shore, driven in from open sea by the north wind's brutal blast. Not so loud the roar of fire whipped to a crackling blaze. Nothing so loud as cries of Trojans, cries of Achaeans, terrible war cries, armies storming against each other. Up and down the decks of the ships Ajax went, with his great plunging strides, swinging in hand his enormous, polished pike for fights at sea, leaping from deck to deck on the fast, trim ships, keeping up a terrific bellowing, calling Achaeans on to defend the ships and shelters. And Hector, too, like a flashing eagle swooping down on bird flocks, winged thousands feeding, swarming a river's bank. So, swooping, Hector went head first at a warship, charged its purple prow, and Zeus behind him, Zeus himself defended his champion. Hector alone he prized and glorified among hordes of men, for Hector's life would be cut short so soon. Thrust him on with his mighty, deathless hand, urging the soldiers on who crowded Hector's back. And again a desperate battle broke at the ships. You'd think they waded into the fighting fresh troops. Unbruised, unbroken, they fought with such new fire. And what were the fighters thinking? Only this. The Achaeans, certain they'd never flee the worst. They'd perish then and there. But the hope soared in every Trojan's heart to torch the ships and slaughter Achaean heroes. So ran their thoughts, closing for the kill. At last, Hector grappled a ship's stern, a beauty built for speed, and Hector held fast, hugging its prow.
Bring fire! Up the war cries, all together!
Harder, his forces charged against the Achaeans. Not even Ajax held his post, no longer now. Forced by the spears, he backed away by inches, certain he'd die there. There he stood, tensing, braced to take them on.
Friends! Fighting Achaeans! Fight! The light of safety lies in our fighting hands. You think we have reserves in the rear to back us up? Some stronger wall to shield our men from disaster? No! We are here on the plain of Troy, all Troy's in arms. Dug in, backs to the sea, land of our fathers far away.
And any Trojan crashing against the beaked ships, torch ablaze in hand, straining to please Hector, who urged him on. Ajax, ready and waiting there, would stab each man with his long, rugged pike. 12 he impaled, point blank, struggling up the hulls. But at length, Ajax could hold his post on the decks no longer. He was overwhelmed by the latest salvos, driven back by the will of Zeus and the fearless Trojan spearmen, hurling blows non-stop, a terrific din at his temples, his shining helmet clashing under repeated blows, and the joint of his left shoulder ached with labour, but ever bracing his huge burnished shield rock steady. He fought for breath, gasping, bathed in sweat, rivering down his body, his limbs soaked and sleek. Where could he find some breathing room in battle? Wherever he looked, pains heaped on pains. Sing to me now, you Muses, you who hold Olympus' vaulting halls, how fire was first pitched on Achaea's ships. Hector lunged at Ajax, toe to toe, hacked his ashwood pike with a heavy sword, and struck the socket just behind the point, the lopped head bounding away, clanging along the ground. So Ajax drew back, out of range, and then they flung their tireless fire at a fast, trim ship. She was up in flames at once, engulfed in quenchless fire. In a flash, the blaze went swirling round the stern, and deep in his heart, brave Ajax knew and shuddered. Here was work of the gods, thundering Zeus on high, cutting him off from battle, dashing all his plans.
In part one of Homer's The Iliad, Achilles was played by Christopher Eccleston and Hector by Ian Glenn. Agamemnon was Bill Wallace, Helen, Imogen Stubbs, and Chryses, Clive Mantle. Athena was played by Susanna Hamilton, Hero by Mia Sotirio, and Odysseus by Michael Elwyn. Priam was Andrew Sachs, Paris, Tom Espiner, and Menelaus, John Mackay. Thetis was played by Jacqueline Tong, Zeus by Michael Fenton Stevens, and Homer by Derek Jacobi. The Iliad was translated by Robert Fagles and abridged for Radio 4 by Tom Holland. The music was composed by Mia Sotirio, and the sound supervisor was Mike Burgess. The programme was produced and directed in Bristol by Viv Beebe and Jeremy Howe.
If you'd like to hear part one again, well, you can, next Saturday evening at 9 o'clock. And you can hear the second part of the Iliad at the same time, 3 o'clock, next Sunday afternoon.